An estimated 20,000 people showed up at the Oakland airport to welcome home their world champion athletics.
Man, have I got a story for you. It's about a ball club. My ball club. It was better than any other ball club ever put together.
Here comes the World Championship trophy!
I'm serious. They were that great. But the thing was, they were also kind of crazy.
The A's were like sort of this orphanage gone mad.
We just got used to being different.
I'm talking about the way they played. And how they fought.
He threw me under the bus.
They fought each other.
He hits Reggie, bam.
Next thing I know, we're bouncing around in lockers.
Ray Fosse went out on a gurney.
And they fought with the team's owner.
Oh, he hated us. My veins were popping. I wanted to go across the table and choke him.
Yeah, the owner. He was kind of, let's just say, complicated.
When I walked in here, it reminded me of a den of thieves.
You'd sell your house if he became your neighbor.
But complicated in a genius type of way.
He's the guy that put together this crazy bunch.
The Oakland A's, they had a fist fight, but they're right on target into another World Series.
What I'm saying is, 3 consecutive World Series titles aren't the only legacy of the Oakland A's of the 70s. Nah, man. The legacy is how they did it.
We kicked their ass. I can say it like that.
What they didn't care about.
We won. That's all that counts.
And what they somehow overcame.
Is the turmoil going on in that clubhouse like we're led to believe? Does anybody like anybody over there?
Trust me, because I had a front row seat, and I'll never forget what I saw.
It is a madhouse here at the Oakland Coliseum.
We were a special breed. We were one of the great dynasties.
Fighting A's, swinging A's, mustache gang, love them.
My first guest tonight is a very colorful man, and he's guided the Oakland Athletics to 5 consecutive division championships and 3 consecutive world championships. Would you welcome, please, Charlie O. Finley.
You want to talk about the swinging A's? Then you got to start and finish with Charles Oscar Finley, better known as Charlie O.
I hate to speak ill of the dead, but the guy was out of his mind.
He was a piece of work. Charlie was a piece of work.
You could write a book how not to run an organization. I mean, it was just terrible.
Incidentally, can you be fined for being on this show tonight? I'd like you to do something where you wouldn't be fined.
Johnny, I probably will be.
Finley was the caricatured Scrooge McDuck. A guy who would perpetually choke a quarter to see if he could kick up 3 dimes. A guy who didn't mind manipulating people.
He was just a bunch of fooey, man.
Well, the first time I met him, he cut my salary 20%. I mean, when you start the relationship off on that, you know it's going to be kind of a war.
After the '72 World Series, I was making $29,000, and Charlie Finley that winter sent me a $1,000 raise. And I said, "You got to be kidding me!" So I called him up. I told Charlie what he could do with his raise, and slammed the phone down. And from that day on, I didn't say one word to Charlie Finley.
Can you live with the criticism when the people get on you?
Well, Johnny, sometimes it gets a little rough.
Yeah.
But, you know, you got to grin and bear it.
Mr. Finley bought the team in 1960 when they were the Kansas City A's. And from the outset, he didn't fit into any old baseball establishment, and he never would.
Charlie Finley was an insurance mogul from the Midwest, loved baseball, but also, I think, saw baseball as a way of improving his status.
Charlie came in as the rank outsider, and when you say old boys clubs about, you know, the owners of the time, it truly was that. He was so not their guy, you know, the guy who, you know, brought a mule to the ballpark and then brought it to hotels on the road.
Charlie O. the Mule, who not only smiles but kneels for you so nicely.
Charlie O. the Jackass, a Missouri mule, absolutely. We used to think of very appropriate.
He was kind of a carny. It was all about bringing attention to the team and bringing people out, but at the same time, he wasn't putting a quality product on the field. This all changes in the late 60s. He slowly and kind of single-handedly, because he doesn't really trust anybody, builds the great dynasty of the 1970s.
I mean, there were a lot of great ball players in the mid-'60s that came up, and he signed all of them.
Charlie had some of the scouts on the other teams taking a little cash under the table or something to give him some tips. Whoever knew.
Mr. Finley was never shy about shaking things up. And in 1968, when he got sick of low attendance in Kansas City, he moved the team west. And Oakland, California, that's where I come into the story.
Charlie Finley, he finds this kid, Stanley Burrell, dancing for change in the parking lot, hires him to be kind of a gopher.
He was just a cute little kid. You know, we didn't know he was going to become what he became.
Stanley Burrell, who's known as MC Hammer.
We called him Little Hammer because he looked just like Hank Aaron.
If you put him side by side, he looked like he was a baby Hammer. The Hammer.
And basically, he's there to spy on the players.
Everybody thought, well, how's Charlie finding out everything that's going on in the clubhouse? And we found out that it was a clubhouse kid.
And every time a player would do something, Hammer would get on the phone to Charlie back in Chicago and say, hey, this guy's doing this. Raleigh, we used to call him Pipeline.
Pipeline.
Yeah, Pipeline, right.
How about we just get on with the story? The story of Mr. Finley and his Swingin' A's, the team that looked like no one else, acted like no one else, and won more than just about anyone else, too.
You can talk about the owner, the fights, and all the other crap. But then again, oh my God, these guys are three-time champions. That's good enough for me.
The only thing that my ball players and myself are interested in today is doing everything within our power to bring a championship team to Oakland.
The A's' very first game in Oakland was April 17th, 1968. It was a sold-out crowd at the Coliseum, and the scene was typical Charlie Finley. He pulled out all the stops, but he still had to convince a whole lot of doubters.
We got a rocky start. A senator said, Oakland is the luckiest team since Hiroshima.
The A's came into town, you know, as kind of orphans. We had to try to sell people on the idea that we're not very good now. We've been losing 100 games a year, but we're going to be better because of these young guys who are coming up.
Now for the Oakland Athletics, Reggie Jackson.
Barely anyone had ever heard of the guys on the team. We didn't know how great they'd become.
Finley just threw us all out there. I think our average on-the-field age, the starting lineup was 22 in 68.
There's a long drive. Goodbye. And the A's are in the lead.
I can't tell you how good of a player Bando was, or how good of a player Joe Rudy was, or how good of a player that Gene Tennis was, Campaneris. And you throw a Hall of Fame reliever in there and a Hall of Fame starter in there.
Watching them play was like watching a boa constrictor eat. You know, they didn't win 11-1. They'd win 3-2, and they just slowly choke you. And they just did it day after day. So that it dawned on people awfully late that this was a juggernaut in the making.
The A's won 82 games in 1968. I know it doesn't sound like much, but it was the first time in 16 years the franchise had a winning record. Then in 69, they got even better, thanks most of all to the birth of a superstar.
Reggie, you seem to be waiting for your pitch a little bit more. Well, yes, this is true. In spring training, Joe DiMaggio and I did work on several things, especially my hitting.
I had a great year. Most homers I hit in one season. The only bad part of the season is that we didn't win the championship.
Reggie Jackson was one of the best players in the game, but this was before free agency and the collective bargaining agreement. He was making $20,000 a season, so he did what most of us would do. He asked his boss for a raise.
Right now, we are, I'd have to say, far apart in reaching some type of agreement as far as dollars and cents are concerned.
He didn't pay anybody. He didn't pay the brothers, the white guys, the Polacks, the Jews, the Italians. He didn't pay anybody.
In retrospect, it brought us together because we had one common enemy.
Money would always be one of the two biggest problems between Charlie O and his Swingin' A's. The other was Charlie was hands-on, which is kind of funny because Charlie lived in Chicago. but he had his ways. He was always plugged in.
Can't even tell you how many times during the middle of a game the phone in the dugout would ring and it'd be Finley wanting to talk to the manager.
He wanted a lineup change, or he wanted this, or wanted that.
I remember one time the phone rang. I picked up the phone. I said, "Hello, Charlie." And he said, "Who's this?" The voice said, "Who's this?" I said, "This is Fingers." He says, "Well, this is Charlie. Don't you ever answer the phone like that again."
Still, the players, they made sure they were always plugged in too.
At the time, we had a few players that would call Charlie if they were upset about their playing status or things weren't going the way they thought they should.
Charlie played favorites. If you were one of Charlie's guys and you got upset, you go right to Charlie. And he'd call at the manager, you know, and just like spank the guy.
He was a terror with his managers. That's why he went through so many of them.
During Mr. Finley's first 10 seasons of owning the A's franchise, the team had, yep, count them. That's right, 10 different managerial changes. But Mr. Finley's 11th hire in 1971, he would stick around a little bit longer. His name was Dick Williams.
And sure enough, he comes in there. He says, "Fellas, I understand the problems here. Part of it is that you guys run to the owner with problems. It's not going to happen. So for the rest of this day, you can call him every hour as often as you take the call. But starting tomorrow, if any one of you guys has a problem and you go to Charlie, I will have your ass." That stopped it.
Williams's great gift, other than the fact he was a great manager, was that he would tell Finley no, and his players knew that.
Dick was not the kind of a guy that everybody had to like. He was really tough.
I came up with the bases loaded early in the game, and I popped up. As I was walking by him, he says, "300 hitter, my ass." Just under his breath. But he knew how to motivate guys.
When you went into his office, I called it going behind the Iron Curtain, because he would close that door and chew you out, man.
But the truth was that Dick Williams suited Vita Blue just fine. That year at age 21, he won the MVP and the Cy Young.
Blue has shown baseball fans around the world that he is the complete pitcher.
Even more importantly, the club won 101 games and made the postseason for the first time since Mr. Finley bought the team.
In 71, I guess you have to say it's been the year of the Oakland A's, the big green machine, the Galley Green Giant. We really put it together this year with a great manager, a great pitching staff, some great offense, and some great defense.
But in the playoffs, they got swept by the defending champs, the Orioles.
We were just in awe just to be there. In Baltimore, I mean, they've been there before. We weren't ready for them yet. It was a different story next year.
In spring training in 1972, Reggie shows up in a full beard.
We had rules, no facial hair. Well, Reggie wore a beard.
And as Reggie is wont to do, tells every reporter in sight, "I don't care if Charlie Finley doesn't like it."
So now Charlie figures, okay, he's going to use reverse psychology on Reggie. So he came up with this mustache thing.
Charlie told everybody on the ball club, if you have a mustache on opening day, you get $300.
Now, obviously, that doesn't sound like a lot today. $300 was $300 back then. So he figured if Reggie sees what's happening, he'll shave his beard off, and that's what brought Charlie was wanting. But it didn't work.
It took me about 3.5 to 4 months. Some of the guys told me not to cut it off and keep it.
I've had it ever since. Never shaved it off.
I just kept it, and it kept getting longer and longer, and I kind of like it right now. My wife likes it, and I'll just keep it as long as I can.
That's the only reason why I grew this thing, was to get $300 out of Charlie.
So we kept the beard, we kept our mustaches, we started winning. That became our trademark.
Yeah, they looked pretty cool. And they won a lot of games. More games, actually, than any other club in the American League in 1972. And just as important for the A's, they had an identity like no other club.
We were considered a blue-collar stepchild of the Bay Area. San Francisco had the glitz and the glamour.
Whereas Oakland always wore its edge on its sleeve.
We played in the perfect place at the right time for that. We played about 5 miles from Berkeley. And the kids at Berkeley loved us because we were the countercultural guys. We were hated by the other teams, hated by other fans. We got in fights.
Everybody wanted to come out to the ballpark to see the crazies from Oakland.
Back in the playoffs, the A's had another rough battle on their hands. this time with the Detroit Tigers. It took all 5 games, but they fought their way to their first World Series. Only thing was, it came with a huge loss.
We lost Reggie, on a double steal.
The runners are going. Here comes Jackson on the way home, and he is safe to put one. And Jackson is hurt.
I paid a price and can't play in the World Series, but maybe if I didn't score the run, we wouldn't be here. So we are here, and that's what does count.
Now we had to go into the Big Red Machine. Without Reggie.
Oh, the Big Red Machine. The Cincinnati Reds, the class of the National League. Old school and no joke. Loaded with big stars and big confidence, and favored big to just blow the A's out.
I mean, you look at Bench, Tony Perez, Morgan, Pete Rose, these guys are Hall of Famers.
Welcome to Game 1 of the 1972 World Series. They have contrasting styles. The A's look different. They're the mod gang. Cincinnati demands its players the businesslike approach and look.
It was billed as culture versus counterculture.
The hair against the squares, I think they called it.
Hairs against the squares.
We weren't squares, but Tony Perez, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Davey Concepcion, they're not long-haired guys. That just wasn't in their DNA.
We weren't given much of a chance against the big, bad Cincinnati Reds, but...
It's not what you look like, it's if you can play.
Gone, a home run for Gene Tennis. And the A's grab the lead.
To see Gene Tennis do what he did, he had only hit 5 home runs all year.
Tennis sets a series record with round trippers his first 2 times up.
And man, alive, he hit 2 in the first game.
Gene Tennis had been the backup catcher most of the season. But as the starter in the World Series, he got hot. And in a series where 6 of the 7 games would be decided by just 1 run, every one of them would matter.
I've never experienced a week like that, 7 games like that. It's never happened again.
Gene Tennis now is the first catcher to hit 4 homers in a World Series.
I mean, that was unbelievable. 7 games where you're looking at a ball and it looks like batting practice, pitched to you.
Gene's big series wasn't all roses, though, thanks to a scary situation with an angry Reds fan in Cincinnati before Game 6.
This guy was popping off, and this lady overheard him say, if this Tennis guy hits another home run, he's going to shoot me. Well, she goes and gets a security guard, and they pull him out of line, and sure enough, he had a loaded revolver on him and a bottle of whiskey. I'm with the FBI the rest of the series. But the funniest about the whole story is, I get a letter from this guy 10 years later. Apologized, paid his dues, went to jail. About that one.
The Reds forced Game 7 at Riverfront Stadium, but that day, Tennis again had the big hit to put the A's up for good one more time.
I really hate to talk about that series because I made the last out of that series. I hit it to left center off of fingers, and Joe Rudy ran it down.
I was over there and got the ball, and we were just jumping up and down, screaming. We couldn't believe that we had won the World Series against the Big Red Machine.
That's what you dream about as a kid. And then all of a sudden it's there and it's over in 5 seconds. But what are 5 seconds?
It was phenomenal flying back into Oakland that first time. There was just thousands of people everywhere.
There was more people at the airport than there was at the ballpark. It was crazy.
Going from almost obscurity to winning the World Series, can't really describe the feeling.
We were the first pro team to win any kind of a championship in the Bay Area. And after '72, everybody said, well, wait a minute, these guys may look stupid, they may act stupid, and we can't stand them, but they are pretty good, though, and we're going to have to take them serious.
When 1973 got going, the A's were defending champs. But early on, they weren't playing like it.
He's got him.
We started off real bad. We even got to 500 until right around mid-season. It was kind of a struggle that year.
So Charlie comes in from Chicago, and you're not going to believe who he brought in, the Bear. He brings Bear Bryant from Alabama.
Finley had been raised in Birmingham and had got to know Bear Bryant. Of course, this was during Bear's heyday of winning all the national championships. Bear came in and talked about how hard it was to repeat. You know, you win one, it's so hard to win the second one.
I don't know if that made us better, but I know we just kept playing and kept winning.
The A's finally got hot in August, taking over first place for good. Meanwhile, in the front office, there was a young man climbing up the corporate ladder. Hey, that's me.
MC Hammer would constantly come up and ask if he could do anything. Charlie really liked how hard he was willing to work.
He promotes this teenage kid from the streets of Oakland like higher and higher into the organization until eventually he's the vice president of the Oakland A's.
One day, Charlie said, I want Hammer to do an inning, a play-by-play tonight. I said, okay. Third inning comes, I introduce Hammer. 1 hour later, I get a phone call from Bill Dwyer, the general manager of our flagship radio station that had the rights to the ball games, said, get that kid off the air.
That was just one of the things that Charlie did. Almost like saying to baseball, you've got the scouting department, you got general managers, I've got MC Hammer.
Mr. Finley might have treated me well, but the players felt otherwise. And after they channeled those feelings into a third straight division title, the A's beat the Orioles in 5 games in the playoffs to get back to the World Series.
Welcome to the 1973 World Series. The National League champs, the New York Mets, versus the American League champions, the Oakland A's.
The A's were big favorites over the Mets, but after they took a 1-0 series lead, Game 2 went into extra innings. And in the 12th, a chain of events began that still makes the players angry all these years later. Second baseman Mike Andrews made 2 big errors that cost the A's the game.
So Mike Andrews with his second error of the inning, and the Mets lead by a score of 10-6.
And afterwards, Mr. Finley lost it and took Andrews off the roster.
They wanted Mike to agree that he had an arm problem. Charlie got the team doctor right off of, I guess, a phony medical report that something wrong with his shoulder.
And went into his office, and I read the report, which in my opinion was a total lie. And I told him I wouldn't sign it. He says, okay, if you're not going to sign it, fine. We'll get it through without you.
Andrews did end up signing the document so the team could legally bring in another player to replace him. But his teammates were outraged.
We had a meeting, and basically the gist of that meeting was, if Mike Andrews is not reinstated tomorrow morning, we're boycotting the rest of the World Series.
We expressed our opinion, and we're going to express our opinion. And when something like that happens from the top of a ball club, there's nothing the players can do except express their opinion.
Fortunately, Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner, did not allow the change in players, and Mike Andrews stayed on the team and got a standing ovation.
The fans are giving him a standing ovation, and he's wearing an Oakland A's uniform.
The ovation at Shea Stadium came when Andrews pinch hit in Game 4.
Well, I can't recall many stories like this.
He grounded out, but I think everybody had made their point.
And got a standing ovation from 50,000 people in New York, and the only 2 people who didn't stand up was Charlie and his wife. And that was great. We loved it.
It was the middle of the World Series, but already Dick Williams had decided that for him, the Andrews incident was the last straw.
Dick came in after we got Mike reinstated and said, you know, I just can't take any more of this.
At the end of the World Series, regardless of what happens, he said, I'm finished. I'm done.
I cannot deal with Charlie Finley anymore.
But this was a team that seemed to thrive in the chaos. Down 3-2 in the series, they won Game 6. And then in Game 7, Reggie Jackson just about took care of all the rest by himself.
You know, he loved the light, that red light on the camera. I mean, that's why they call it Mr. October.
Jackson's blast is a clincher. The A's lead 4-0.
Reggie caught fire in Oakland and just carried us to winning that next World Series. It was great to win, but it was almost surreal. It was not nearly as joyous because Finley was very upset with us. In fact, that when we got our World Series rings that year, he did not put a diamond in the ring. It was the first time in Major League history that there was no diamond in the ring.
He just chose to make a point, saying, if you guys go against me, then I can punish you. And that was his way of punishing us, was to give us a cheap ring.
Looked like something that came out of Cracker Jack box. No lie.
That was the downfall between Charlie Finley and the players when we got our rings. That's when everything started going south.
When we would go into Chicago, it never failed I'd get a call from Mr. Finley, and he'd say, I want you to come over to the office, and I want to talk to you. And this one time, he started talking about his wife and his divorce and everything. He broke down and started crying. That was a side of him that you hardly saw.
We had a picture when we were playing AA ball. His wife got really sick, and Finley hired a private plane, flew her to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, paid for all of her medical care and everything. It was never in the paper, never said anything about that. He would do that kind of stuff. But when it came to business, he would battle, and he was very steadfast. After winning our second World Series, Charlie sent me the same contract as I had made in '72, no raise. So I sent it back, and Charlie just starts ripping into me, calling me names, ungrateful SOB, sending that contract back. So I took him to arbitration.
That offseason, before 1974, salary arbitration hearings were a new thing for baseball.
We go to arbitration, and Finley says, Mr. Arbitrator, the only reason that this pitcher here had a real good year is I've got the greatest relief pitcher in baseball, Raleigh Fingers, who saved all of his wins. The next guy in the arbitration was Raleigh. Finley tells the arbitrators, Mr. Arbitrator, let me tell you something. The only reason this guy got 20-something saves is I've got the 3 best starting pitchers in baseball.
The same arbitrator hears both cases. Needless to say, he lost both cases. When I got up there, he said, balls go by him on the left, balls go by him on the right, balls go through his leg. I can't pay this guy what they're asking. And so my veins were popping. I wanted to go across the table and choke him. And my wife was trying to calm me down.
Me and Kenny Holtzman hated him. Or shagging fly balls in right field during batting practice before the game. We look over in the dugout, and I said, Holtzy, look over there. There's Charlie. He's in the dugout. He's doing a TV interview.
Him and I said, let's get this guy. And we both threw balls at him from outfield in the dugout, see if we could hit him.
And then we laid down and started doing setups. By the time the balls got there, he had no idea where they came from.
So yeah, things were getting uglier and uglier in Oakland. And Mr. Finley's choice to replace Dick Williams, one Mr. Alvin Dark, his old manager from Kansas City, that didn't make the players much happier.
I don't think Charlie could get anybody. I think Alvin was probably his only choice out there.
So they had a new manager, but they were still the Swingin' A's. Swinging, by the way, in more ways than one.
We're sitting here playing cards. All of a sudden, we see Billy North. I was facing his way. He hits Reggie, bam. And now here it goes. It was a legitimate knockdown fist fight.
I kind of attribute that to being young and full of testosterone and your ego's getting in the way.
Vida came over, tried to break it up. He was our starting pitcher that night. He got stepped on. Reggie hurt his shoulder. Ray Fosse went out on a gurney.
Next day in the newspaper, A's fighting again.
And 2 weeks later, they weren't just fighting. They were slumping. Barely over 500. It felt like the season was on the brink.
After the game, we came marching back up into the locker room, and Bando was really upset.
I'm mad that I made the last out. I'm mad that we lost. So as I come into the clubhouse, I kick the trash can and I say,
Alvin Dark couldn't manage a meat market. Oh, God, and Alvin's right there.
I don't think that Alvin was 4 feet behind him walking in the clubhouse when he said that. And it got real quiet.
I give Alvin credit. He said, look, I'm not Dick Williams. I don't do things his way. You guys are two-time defending champions. If you don't go out and play on your own, he says, it doesn't matter what I do. So get your butts in gear.
Sure enough, from there, the A's took off.
The ball game is over. Oakland wins the game. He's got it.
They won another division title and had no problem with the Orioles in the playoffs.
And Oakland has clinched its third consecutive American League championship.
But then in the World Series, things wouldn't begin easy.
The 1974 World Series against the Dodgers, Fingers and his wife were on the rocks. And before Game 1, Blue Moon Odom approaches Raleigh Fingers and says, "Who's leaving tickets for your wife's boyfriend today? You?"
He said something to me, I said something to him, and he said something back to me, and next thing I know, we're bouncing around in lockers.
I'm sitting out in the dugout, and here came the clubhouse guy from the visiting clubhouse. He said, "Yeah, you can't believe what's going on back in that dressing room." He said, "I heard these guys don't like each other." He said, "They're fighting back there right now. They're having a huge fight."
I fell backwards. I hit my head on a locker and had about 5 or 6 stitches in my head, and he sprained his ankle.
The Oakland A's have already had a fist fight, but they're right on target into another World Series.
You know, the Dodgers were popping off. A couple guys made comments that there's only 2 guys on the Oakland A's that can make the LA Dodgers. And I said, really? I mean, we just won 2 world championships and we're going into a third, and there's only 2 guys on our team that could make the Dodgers. Kind of pissed everybody off.
We just kind of took it personally as a group, and we kicked their ass.
Long drive to deep left going, and gone. Jackson is homer to the opposite field.
Here's how I kind of sum up our club. You got 2 brothers, and they fight constantly. And this kid across the street comes over. Now, he wants to pick on one of these brothers.
And that'll do it.
Well, now the other brother comes in. He said, "Oh, that's not going to happen." That's the kind of club we have. We can fight, and we can argue, but nobody else is going to mess with us.
They blow through the Dodgers 4-1 in 1974. It's not even close.
Fingers has it and throws the first. And the A's have done it.
We beat the Dodgers in 5 games, and I was on the podium being interviewed. Down below me, sitting, waiting to be interviewed, Raleigh Fingers and Blue Moon Odom with their arms around each other.
74 let us know that whatever people said about us in the past didn't matter.
When you win the first time, everybody points, back and says, hey, they were a very good team. When you win twice, now it's a super good team. When you win it the third time, I think it kind of puts the stamp on your legacy.
There's only one other organization that ever won 3 world championships. It's the Yankees. That's pretty remarkable.
It was jubilation at that time. It was as if we thought, this will go on forever.
In the wake of the A's 3rd straight World Series title in 1974, there was one player already looking for a way out of the madness.
Catfish said, guys, after this World Series, I'm not going to be with the Oakland A's.
This is my last year playing with you guys. What are you talking about?
Catfish Hunter knew that Mr. Finley had missed an insurance payment on his contract, and he took his case to an arbitrator, and sure enough, Catfish was granted free agency.
He can negotiate with any team he likes and demand anything he thinks they'll pay him.
I mean, how stupid is that, to lose a guy that won the Cy Young Award with 25 wins and not pay him? And that's just the way Charlie was. So, Catfish said, I'm gone.
It makes me sit in the driver's seat of a big limousine or something.
Catfish signed for $3.5 million with the Yankees.
That left a big hole in our pitching staff. You're just not going to fill a Catfish Hunter hole.
Even though the A's won their 5th straight division title in '75, they fell to the Boston Red Sox in the playoffs, and misery was on its way.
In 3 straight, the Red Sox defeat the Oakland A's.
We missed Catfish Hunter, and that was the beginning of the unraveling of the end of the Oakland A's.
And the unraveling would be completed the next year when free agency became the rule of law in the game.
the historic court decision striking down baseball's reserve clause,
Congratulations.
allowing players to become free agents after playing out their existing contracts.
Spring training in 1976, most of the A's refused to sign a new contract with Finley because they know when the season ends, I'm going to be able to market myself to the highest bidder.
I mean, he could have signed us, but he didn't want to spend the money.
If it's so futile to be a baseball owner, why are you still in the business?
Well, you know, sometimes I ask myself the same damn question.
9 players on the A's roster were going to be eligible for free agency after the '76 season. Mr. Finley wasn't going to pay them, but he wasn't going to walk away empty-handed. He knew he had to get ahead of the game, and his first move was a shocker.
Early in the season, right after spring training, Finley traded Reggie and Holtzman to Baltimore.
Mr. Finley wasn't done, not by a long shot. At the trade deadline in June, he sold Vida Blue to the Yankees and sent both Raleigh Fingers and Joe Rudy to Boston. It was a pair of deals that made him $3.5 million.
And we're playing Boston that night.
Last night, in the latest bizarre chapter of the Oakland franchise, Fingers and Rudy were in the Boston dugout, wearing Red Sox uniforms.
I got to the ballpark, hey, you've just been traded to the Red Sox. So I went in the clubhouse, picked up all my junk out of my locker, went across the hall to the Red Sox locker room.
It was really surreal, and I was just a mess. I mean, because I've been with that team for 15 years.
For Vida Blue, moving was even more stunning because Mr. Finley had actually just signed him to a new contract with a very uncharacteristic raise.
Finley had more or less tricked Vida into signing a contract, and he had gotten sold to the Yankees, but they wouldn't take him unless he signed, and the Yankees basically said, you know, pay him whatever he wants.
He added more money to the number that we had been talking about, and of course I go sign the contract in good faith. By the time I get back halfway home, the hourly news had me going to the Yankees. I'm like, what? What?
Questions are being raised about the sale, and Baseball Commissioner Bowie Kuhn has scheduled a hearing in New York.
If I felt any better, I'd go see a doctor for fear something was wrong.
I have a telegram from Commissioner Bowie Kuhn in a scrapbook saying, just stay put.
The only regret is I didn't sell more.
I guess Bowie decided, you know, you can't sell these guys like cattle. And Charlie thought he could.
Bowie Kuhn today canceled the $3.5 million sale of 3 Oakland Athletic stars.
Charlie O was furious with the decision, and in protest, he refused to let Vida, Raleigh, and Joe Rudy rejoin the team.
Charlie was so upset, he told us, you guys aren't going to be in uniform. We weren't in uniform for 2 weeks. So we basically played with 22 guys for 2 weeks, and all the players were upset. They were pissed off.
Here, I'm going to tell you how we got him reinstated. We're going to strike.
It all came to a head on June 27th as the team's new manager, Chuck Tanner, was filling out his lineup card.
Salbana went in and told Chuck, you call up Charlie, we're not going to play today. Everybody's in their street clothes. 15 minutes before the game. We're not going to play the game against Minnesota. You're going to lose the gate.
Tanner's on the phone with Charlie in Chicago. They're going back and forth. What are they doing? What are they doing? They're walking, Charlie. I'm telling you. They're sitting in their lockers. They're ready to go right out there in their cars. They go home.
Chuck told him on the phone, said, Charlie, the boys ain't going to play.
They can't do that. What's the matter with these guys? He said, you got those lineup cards? I got one with Rudy and one without. Which one you want me to take out there and read it to him?
Chuck came out of his office and he read the lineup. Leading off, Billy North, Bert Campaneris.
Hitting third, playing left field, Joe Rudy. Place went crazy.
That's how we got us back on the roster.
The players might have felt like they won that battle, but in the end, they couldn't overcome what 2 weeks without those 3 stars did to the team.
We lost our division by 2.5 to Kansas City. 2 weeks we lost service of Joe Rudy as our third place hitter, Vida in our rotation, and Raleigh out of that bullpen. We might have had a 2.5 game lead. At times, I thought, me speaking, I thought he didn't want us to win because now you got to pay. He didn't want to do that.
It was like every last bridge had burned. And as they packed up their lockers at the end of that 76 season, they knew it was over. I knew it was over for our swinging A's.
If there were ever a time when you'd think at this time for a funeral, that was it. The A's were dead.
You know, there's an old saying that if you want to see the sunshine, you got to weather the storm. Right now, I'm going through a storm, and I feel it won't be too long before I'll be looking at the sunshine and the rainbow.
No rainbow looked to be coming to Oakland in 1977, when the A's lost 98 games, and the only reminder of the good times was poor old Vida Blue, stuck in Oakland thanks to that contract extension he had been tricked into signing.
I'm there all by myself. Now we're in a rebuilding stage and you go like, I was just on 3 world championship teams.
To be an Oakland A's fan can be a lonely existence.
Wow. The highs and lows of this business, the emotional roller coaster that you're on was quite telling, and I was very frustrated.
Up until a few years ago, it was a battle of the wits. Now today, it's a battle of how much you got on the hip.
By 79, it was a franchise that looked like it wanted to die, and that's when he got out.
Perhaps the most controversial owner in all of sports, Charles O. Finley, has given up the reins.
It was very emotional for him. Charlie called and was weeping, saying he wished he hadn't sold the team.
I love baseball. I was in it for 20 years, and I do regret that I'm not in the game today because I do miss it.
It's almost as if you're cool if you are a Charlie Finley hater. And that's what I want to see done away with. And let people know the positive side and what we achieved.
You know, players are going to remember the fights, obviously, and the miserable way he used to talk to us and treat us like crap. And then on the other hand, you say, you know what? He's the guy that put together this crazy bunch. Maybe he wasn't that crazy. Maybe he knew what he was doing, you know, and maybe he deserves some credit for doing it.
Everything they did, everything they won, will never be forgotten.
It is a madhouse here at the Oakland Coliseum.
But just think about it. How many more championships could the A's have won?
We were on the verge of something real special.
The Oakland A's are the world champions of baseball.
The sad part about it is that the nucleus of our ball team, who knows, we might have won that 4th, might have won the 5th in a row. Who knows?
What a way to wind the game up with a flurry.
That's what's so frustrating about it. We never were given an opportunity to see if we could accomplish that.
If we'd have stayed together with the same exact team, I think we could have won 2 or 3 more world championships. But, you know, Charlie wasn't going to let that happen.
So they still talk about the maybes, but they'll also never stop talking about how great it was.
The A's win it.
Even the Big Red Machine doesn't dominate the National League the way the Oakland A's dominated the American League in the first half of the 1970s.
I don't think we got the respect that we deserved. If our team was in New York or in Chicago or in LA, we would have been the greatest team in the decade.
We were one of the great dynasties. We won 5 divisions, 3 World Series in a row. We were a special breed, and when you look back at it, you have a great appreciation for it, and you're thankful that you were part of it. I wish more people saw it.
Well, I saw it. The titles.
It's been a long, hard grind, but they made it.
The fights.
The Oakland A's are still squabbling.
And everything in between. There was just no other team like the Swingin A's.
Nobody believed they could do it but themselves.
There was just no other group that will ever give you a story like this one.